Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. It is the Wednesday edition of Point of View, and we are so grateful that you can join us. Let me just mention that in just a few minutes, we're going to be talking with our good friend Dan Martin. He is with PureHope, and of course, in the past, we've talked with Jasper Hall and Noel Boucher and a variety of other individuals with that organization. So we're going to spend some time giving you an update on that. And then as we get into our next 2 hours, which are national hours, we'll have John Stonestreet with us of the Colson Center for Christian Worldview, and of course, the voice of Breakpoint Commentary, and then Josh McDowell, author of so many books and an individual that we have enjoyed having on this program for many years. So we're going to be talking about lots of topics, and they're going to move around quite a bit. But I thought for just a minute I might point you to a few of the articles we've posted. Some of them are about Josh McDowell. Some of them are by John Stonestreet. But one of those is a piece by Dennis Prager. Now, Dennis Prager's been on this program before, and he calls it the left-wing anti-American lie. Okay, what's that all about? Well, it gets back to how if you count by race, then everything is important in terms of racial characteristics, and it does not help our society at all. And, of course, if you're not familiar, the individual that killed so many of individuals, and these were women, in Atlanta at these various massage parlors, 6 out of the 8 were Asian, so this allowed for the opportunity to say that this was racially motivated and this was actually an anti-Asian attack. It was probably tied more to the conversation we're going to have with Dan Martin and Josh McDowell in terms of sex or sexual addiction, but okay. But I don't think that that is the case, and Dennis Prager goes into the details about that. And, of course, if you have wondered, well, how do I think about this issue of race from a biblical point of view, here's my booklet on racism, and we spend some time, first of all, acknowledging that there are various racial attitudes. Sometimes there are individuals who are bigoted and use race as an example or an excuse to call out to others or to hurt other individuals. Bigots, you almost never need an excuse, but this gives them one. But then we also just talk about the fact that the word race is so imprecise in terms of just genetics, but also in terms of the Bible, because the Bible makes it pretty clear there's only one race, the human race. But nevertheless, given the fact that people start with this assumption, you then begin to see all of the things that have begun to arise, because you now have a couple of United States senators who are Democrats that have said they are not going to vote for another nominee for Joe Biden unless they're Asian American. And I'll give you the short list in just a minute of all the Asian Americans that have been put on the various positions of authority under Joe Biden. But that's not enough, because they're not, I guess, cabinet level positions. And so when you start by counting by race, then the only thing that matters is race. When we talk about something which we may get into later today, you look at the latest suspect out of course, the shooting in Boulder, Colorado, and everybody looking for a racial component said, well, he's got to be a white supremacist. He's got to be another white man who, instead of being killed by the police, was taken into custody, and they jumped to all sorts of assumptions until they found out his name was Ahmad al-Alisi Alisa. Oh, wait a minute. that last name, Alisa, and Ahmad Alisa is an indication of where he really is from. And, of course, we know a lot more about his Muslim background. Not that we say that that even is an issue, other than the fact that he's certainly not a white supremacist by any definition. He's also not a far-right individual, because you can go to his social media pages they've talked about and see all the anti-Trump statements. So it just illustrates, again, that sometimes this issue of counting by race is really a disaster. And Dennis Prager, as he always does, goes into this in more detail and points out that this individual that killed many of those individuals in the parlor may have been doing it for a variety of different reasons, but race doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. But then points out that then you start seeing all these articles about Asian Americans and others who have been facing any kind of bigotry. And again, as we've talked about on this program, yes, if you look at some of the hate crime statistics, first of all, number one on that list are Jews. Almost never hear about anti-Semitism, yet that's the biggest issue there. But Asians are on that list, and some of those numbers in terms of the issue of hate or extremism or bigotry, hate crimes, some of them do show up. And that existed before we had a virus that came out of China. Now, are some bigots using this as the China flu is leading to that, and people trying as much as they possibly can to actually suggest that that is indeed the case, that something that was said by Donald Trump a year ago is now leading to all of that. And, of course, we know that's not the case. And then, of course, Dennis Prager, as he does with so many statistics, talks about, okay, let's just look at some of these headlines about the number of hate crimes jumped this last year for Asian Americans. And it jumped from 3 to 28. And he says, okay, even if you take that jump from 3 to 28, which is pretty small if you think about that, that's one in every 300,000 New Yorkers committed a hate crime against Asian Americans. One out of every 300,000. And that is still too many. But it, I think, just helps us understand that some of these blaring headlines are simply not accurate. So as we take a break, let me just mention that one of the things we are doing this week is our Truth Team Week. We are committed to truth. We're committed to telling you the truth. And just the other day, I had somebody even call and say, you know, this particular business and corporation wants to speak out against the attacks on Asian Americans. And I said, well, I think anytime we can speak out against bigotry, discrimination, hate crimes, I'm all for it. But are the numbers as high as the headlines would imply? And he said, well, I don't know where I could find that information. So I sent to him a link to the Dennis Prager piece. And so I've posted it now on the website because I want you to know the facts, because we're committed to the truth. And if nothing else, there are lots of other hate crimes that aren't being covered. One of those you just heard me mention, that is the whole anti-Semitism that is existing in our society. And we want to tell you the truth and encourage you, especially as we go through this hour, to consider what you might do to support this ministry. For as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, you can be part of the Truth Team, receive some of these booklets like this one that I just held up on racism and the most recent one on education. And as I mentioned, Monday and Tuesday, we still have a match on the table for this hour. This match was put together so that we could encourage some of you that listen from 12 to 1 in the Dallas area or in Texas, although I recognize that many of you listen on the USA Radio Network, some of you listen online and the rest. So there's still a match on the table, which means your gift of $50 becomes $100. Your gift, if you said, hey, I want to join the Truth Team, $360 becomes $720. And so I hope you might consider what you might do to support this ministry. And as we go to a break, you can go to the website, which is pointofview.net. You can find this article by Dennis Prager, but also you can call us because we have some people willing to take a phone call. That number is 800-347-5151. That is 800-347-5151. Call and say, I'd like to know a little bit more. If you join at higher levels, we have all sorts of other great thank you gifts we'll send to you. You can find those by going to the website, or you can also hear about them from those on the phone. 800-347-5151. We'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
How should we respond when spiritual heroes fall? That is a question Greg Kokel writes about and discussed with me recently on my radio program. The reason for the discussion centered around Ravi Zacharias, but his wise conclusions are appropriate for any time we see a pastor, elder, or ministry leader fall. He offered 5 principles to help us think biblically about the issue. First, guard your soul. We don't have to dwell on all the sordid details of the scandal. Paul says that dark deeds must be exposed. We are to do that to rebuke the guilty as a warning to others. But Paul also teaches that it is disgraceful even to speak of those things done in secret. Second, do not be surprised when sinners sin. Yes, we may be shocked, but we should not be shaken. The Bible notes that Jesus did not entrust himself to those who believed in him, since he knew what was in man. Third, remember, truth is still true. It is tempting, especially to the skeptic, to denigrate Christianity because of the failings of a Christian leader. Truth is not nullified because a Christian leader strayed from biblical teaching. Fourth, do not become cynical. There's always an impulse to cast a jaundiced eye towards other Christian leaders. Do not let the failings of a few cause suspicion of the many. Who do you trust? Well, you can probably make a list of people you trust because you have no reason to distrust them. And fifth, finally resolve to finish well. The goal of the Christian life is to complete the course and be commended by God for our faithful service. We, of course, need help to do that from other believers and from the Holy Spirit in our lives. These are 5 wise principles that help you reflect on what to do when spiritual heroes fall. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
Committed to truth, and now we're going to be talking about this idea of committed to truth about sexuality. Again, we always issue the disclaimer, we will not say anything that I think would be a difficulty at all, but again, I know some people tend to listen this hour with their kids, and I'll let you make that choice, because we have Dan Martin in studio with us, and in a couple hours we have Josh McDowell. So, and even when we talk with John Stonestreet today, we may get into it. So this is not necessarily intended as a theme, but it turned out that way. So Dan Martin, if you're not familiar, is with a group called PureHope. If you've listened before, you've heard Jasper Hall on here. You've heard Noel Boucher and Dan as well. He is the Ministry Director for PureHope, an individual that has served in ministry for many years, was a campus pastor, and just brings a lot of enthusiasm to a very difficult topic, but one we need to talk about every single day here on the radio program. And I'm so grateful that you're here, Dan.
Thanks so much for having me, Kerby. It's great to be here.
Let's, if we can, give people an idea of PureHope. And we have a link to your website. So when people go there, they're going to see that, first of all, there are conferences. So this last year, the pandemic and lockdown have maybe affected that. But as I was talking to you about off air, in some respects, because so much of what you do is online, you really haven't missed a beat, have you?
We really haven't. In fact, I hesitate to say this, but COVID has actually provided some great opportunities for us.
Yes.
It's helped us to sharpen some of our curriculum that we have and really focus on what I think will help our ministry go beyond what we can do individually, and that is to train the trainer, to really come up with a curriculum where we can train pastors and ministry leaders and can take the message and the everything we do at Pure Hope and take it to their congregations and take it to their sphere of influence. And I think that's going to turn out to be just a fantastic blessing for our ministry.
And I think one of the things I love about Pure Hope, and I saw that even when Noel Boucher was running part of it, is let's get away from the negativity about sexuality, because there are that. And certainly I've been involved over the years on 2 different boards that have gone into the schools talking about STDs and why you want to wait to have sex and all sorts of things, but to really talk about a biblical view and this idea of pure hope. And one of the things that when people land on your website is see that purity is a relationship, and then they'll also say, wait a minute, I can get a free pocket guide to talking about sex, the sex question.
Yeah.
And so that's certainly one of those felt needs that parents have, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, if I had to summarize our ministry in one sentence, what I would say is that we are about reframing how the church thinks and speaks about purity. Because inadvertently, I think what the church has done is the church has set up purity as this idea of something we can accomplish by abstaining, or something that we can keep. And that is just a narrative that's not in Scripture. Because as our name comes from this verse, 1 John 3:3, everyone who has this hope in him, Jesus, purifies himself just as he is pure. And so when you see on our website that one of our key tenets is purity is a relationship, it's not an accomplishment. Purity is really a relationship with the pure one, Jesus, the only one who was ever pure. And it is his work in me that's purifying me. And so that's really what our ministry is about.
Now, I've worked with this organization back when it had a different name, and a lot of that was then kind of issuing the topic of pornography.
Yes.
We have a booklet on pornography, and of course, you can go all the way back, since I'm the old guy around the table, to when the first book I ever wrote on the subject of social ethics. I had a chapter on pornography, but back then, you had to go to a more questionable section of town or things like that to find something. But now every young person has access to it with just one push of a button. So in some respects, whereas before we had maybe a geographical barrier that a person had to overcome, now, unfortunately, it really does get back to relationships and gets back to the kind of modeling and teaching that parents give to their kids, isn't it?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we do is we really help parents see through a threefold strategy when it comes to pornography, when it comes to talking about sex, and even the intersection of technology and our sexuality with the access that you just talked about. And this threefold strategy is about protect, model, and equip. All 3 of those things. And I think what our ministry tries to do is not just help parents protect their kids from the sexualized culture, but really helping equip them for the sexualized culture that they will encounter at some point beyond our homes. And we can shelter them as long as we hope we can, but eventually we're going to have to launch our kids. And so, Kerby, as a dad who's launched 3 kids out into the world, I'd much rather send equipped kids out into the world than protected kids. But the third one, the protect, equip, the third one is model. What am I modeling for my kids? What am I modeling for those that I lead? If I'm a pastor, am I modeling an open lifestyle when it comes to everything that I do? Am I in accountability relationships? Is my internet activity and my mobile devices, are they open to others viewing that and seeing what I'm doing online? So really, what we want to pass on is not just teaching our kids truth, but modeling for them truth when it comes to our sexuality.
Let's work through each one of those just in a little more detail. Protect is the first one. And I recognize that when you're dealing with young children, the sad reality is that you ask, when's the first time you saw a sexual image? And if you talk to people our age, or at least my age, some kid had a magazine that his dad hid under the bed. Yep. But now it's usually they found it on a phone. So there are all sorts of things that we can and should do to protect the younger eyes from having their innocence stolen in a moment's notice.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Ignorance does not protect innocence.
Yeah.
And in the world that we live in, where our kids are subjected to 14,000 sexualized messages each and every year, protecting them from those messages because we think we're protecting their innocence is actually having the opposite effect. I have parents ask me all the time, when should I start talking to my kids about sex? Well, my answer is another question. When does the world start talking to your kids about sex? And
sadly, very young.
Do you want to be on the defensive end of that, kind of responding to what the world has to say? Or do you want to be out in front of this, teaching them what God's word has to say? Because as you'll see in all of our literature and on our website, God has a better story than what the world's going to tell our kids. The problem is we're not telling it.
Yes. And Josh McDowell's going to be with us in a couple hours. It's amazing we got the two of you together. You're just perfect bookends because Josh years ago pointed out that all the surveys show that if you are the first person as a parent to talk to your kids about sex, then they're more likely to come to you. But if you come to them and they ask some question, you go, I don't know what I'm going to say, yep. Or we'll get to that someday. Then they're going to go, well, they're going to talk to their peers. You know? And it's just as amazing how important it is for parents. So we've talked about protection. We're coming to a break, though, and I thought for just a minute when we come back, we'll talk about all the resources to equip. Because a lot of people are going to go, okay, I got that. Maybe I need to not give my kids a cell phone. Maybe we need to have some kind of screen protection on my computer. Sadly, not a lot of Christians do that.
That's right.
You know that. But at least some do. But then the next point is, okay, getting them ready for going out into the world. What happens when somebody then shows them an image, or they want to text them or sex them, or they want to encourage them to get involved in some kind of relationship that is unbiblical. So we want to talk about that. And so if we go to a break, let me encourage you to go to purehope.net, and you're going to find out all the great material that Dan Martin is here talking about. He's in studio with us after the break, so we'll continue talking about that as well. But also, I just wanted to remind you that we are in the midst of our Truth Team Week, committed to truth, and we're committed to truth about God's view of sex, and certainly committed to truth about pornography and those dangers, and committed to truth about sexual trafficking and all sorts of issues that relate to the conversation we're having today. So if you believe in that, let me just encourage you to go to the website pointofview.net. You'll first of all find a link to purehope.net, and that'll get you there. But also you can click on that one banner, and the banner there simply encourages you to become a member of the Truth Team. And as you do so, you can join for as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. You can join at a higher level, $50 a month, even $100 a month. And there are tremendous benefits to that and various gifts that we provide. So you can scroll down and see all of those. But most importantly, we hope that you will think, again, that this is an important conversation and the kinds of conversations we should have. So if today you're learning a little bit more about something you can apply to you and your family, I hope that you'll visit the website, pointofview.net, and make your gift. And if you'd like to talk to someone, there's enough time right now. You won't miss anything Dan's going to be talking about because we have a break. So give us a call at 800-347-5151. We have a match on the table, so every dollar is doubled, and we'll be right back.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again with Dan Martin as we continue to talk about Pure Hope. We have a link to purehope.net, and I want to talk about some of the resources there because these are great resources because we talked about protection. That's important. What about equipping and modeling? And Dan, first of all, we should mention that up until now, you haven't had so many conferences. You haven't been able to go into churches, but things are changing dramatically. We're coming out of lockdown, and so if somebody wanted to have you or a number of other people come and speak in church, or especially come to a conference and learn more, some of the face-to-face is going to take place pretty soon, isn't it?
It is, and I'm excited for that to happen. I've got a few things on the calendar that are face-to-face. That'll be the first time in over a year.
That's amazing.
That we've been able to be face-to-face. So I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, if somebody's interested in bringing us to a church or a Christian school, they can go onto our conferences page and actually request a speaker and look and see some of the resources that we have to do conferences.
Let's talk about those resources. If you click on the button there that says all resources, well, you'll be scrolling for a while because you got a lot of material. You have them in English and in Spanish, and so that is the case. And so you've got various study guides, you have leaders guides, you have a magazine. It's going to take a few minutes to go through that. Of course, you also have, recovery in a sexualized culture and just a whole series of other things. So, and some devotionals. So talk about all the resources. There are many.
Yeah, and I'll talk about a couple of new ones.
Yes.
We just came out with our first app. So there is a Pure Hope app now that's available, and that has a number of great tools on it. Number one is just a daily hope. It's our staff is writing it, gives people every day just a little bit of encouragement as they pursue purity in their own lives. The app also has a link to all the tools and all the resources. It's got some videos on there, just some quick 2-3 minute videos that people can watch as well. So the app has been a big addition to our content. The other thing you'll see right away when you go on our website is our pocket guides, and we've created 2. We're actually working on our 3rd right now. And what they are resources to help people have conversations about sex. And the first one we did was for parents. That's a big push of our ministry. It's a parent's guide to talking about sex. We also have one for ministry leaders and pastors, and it's really to help spark the conversation, be a catalyst for conversation about sex within the church.
Very good.
And that's available. They're free downloads on the website. We're in the process of editing our 3rd pocket guide, which is a conversation really helping couples have conversations about sex, healthy conversations, because one of the things you find in marriage, and you talk with marriage counselors, is this is a difficult topic to talk about even within marriage, the intimacy of marriage.
Yes.
And so we want to help married couples really have healthy dialogue about sex as well. The couple of other things that have come out just in the last year, we have 2 YouVersion devotionals that are available. One is for parents and one is for overcoming shame from sexual misconduct. And then there is a podcast. We just launched season 3 of our podcast. That's available as well. A lot of fun. And Kerby, believe it or not, we've been a ministry that's been around since the mid-'80s. And I know you go back to our founder, Jerry Kirk, and a relationship with him. We've never written a book. And so our first book will be coming out this summer. And we are really excited to do that. We've never gone through the book publishing process before. And so our first book is there. And then finally, probably our most popular resource, which is available on our website, but also through Right Now Media, is a resource called Quest. And
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes.
Parenting in a Sexualized Culture.
So good.
And really we hit on what is God's story of sex? What does the Bible have to say? How do you have ongoing dialogue with your kids? Not just a one-time sex talk, but an 18-year sex talk.
So good.
And then you mentioned this before, just how do parents really come up with a strategy when it comes to technology. And so just really tackling the digital area of our lives, helping with them, and then finally just leaving a godly legacy in our family. As parents, how do we do that? How do we leave a legacy that we were meant to leave, that God desires for us to leave with our families?
So again, purehope.net, and again, you'll find all those resources. You might want to, again, schedule Dan and Jasper and all sorts of other individuals that would be available to do that. And, of course, there's some great resources. And you mentioned Dr. Jerry Kirk. You said to me off air, something I should mention, he's still going strong. And, when you're an old fossil like me, he's 90, right?
Yeah.
So Dr. Kirk is still going. And, of course, he was the one that started this a long time ago. It had a different name. And then you mentioned something was sad. Rick Schatz, who we had on this program half a dozen times, is no longer alive. So we, certainly pray for that family. But the legacy continues. This has gone through about 2 or 3 generations, and I think it illustrates only so well why this is important. And I thought just before we wind down, I might get to one of the articles here that you have together, and that is the evangelical view of sex at the root of our sex scandal? If you look at the website today, my piece is on spiritual heroes that have fallen, and that actually goes back to a conversation that I had about a week ago because we were talking with Greg Kokel about that. We will no doubt be talking about that in 2 hours with Josh McDowell, because Josh McDowell did a very good podcast interview with his son, Sean McDowell. Josh will be on today. Sean will be on tomorrow. So one of those times, or maybe both, we'll be talking about this issue. But you have also looked at this issue as well. Can you help us out?
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, whenever there are scandals within the church, it kind of brings up this topic. And with with Ravi Zacharias and some of the scandals that have gone on there, and then Carl Lentz in New York,
right.
These recent ones kind of bring this issue to the surface, unfortunately.
Yes.
And I say unfortunately because I hate that we're having to deal with that. But this article, Is the Evangelical View of Sex at the Root of Our Sex Scandals, is really, I think, a helpful article. It's from the Religious News Service. Mm-hmm. And the author of this, and I've not read her book, so this is not an endorsement of the book because I have not had a chance to read it. Sheila Ray Gregory is her name. But there's one line in this that she makes, and this is also at the heart of Pure Hope and what we're about. And I want to read this one paragraph. She says, "We want to call the evangelical church to something higher, something better, something more centered on the person and character of Jesus."
Well said.
Until we start talking about a Jesus-centered sexual ethic rooted in mutuality and intimacy, we will continue to have these scandals on our front pages because they're reflecting what's happening in our bedrooms. Kerby, I'm committed to this. The church, we've got to be talking about this topic, and we've got to be talking about it in a new and different way. And I'm not saying that we get away from the biblical narrative. I'm saying we get back to the biblical narrative, that this story of sex, that God's purpose, God's design of sex is at the root of all of this. We are broken people. We are in need of a redeemer, and Jesus is there. And again, purity is a relationship with him. We need to pursue our Redeemer, the pure one. And that's really what this is all about.
When we talk about this, you can look at the leaders, but how about the fact that we had a 21-year-old that goes into these Atlanta massage parlors and kills all of those women, 21 years of age, a member of a Southern Baptist church, and again, if we can give hope to individuals that they do not have to be addicted to pornography, they do not have to be addicted to sex, they can follow the right path, and we can certainly apply the principles that are biblical principles, but they can find at purehope.net. Then I'm encouraged about the future. But that's one of the reasons why we love to have you guys on. Anytime you want to come on, anytime you got a conference that you need to promote or anything like that, especially when the book comes out, you're definitely coming on, right?
Great.
We'll be talking about that. And so, Dan, I've appreciated you and I appreciate all the incredible legacy of what has been there for so many years and is so needed today, and a good example of why we encourage people, even as we're going to a break now, go to the website. You're going to find information about purehope.net. But also hope you'll stop by and find that little button there that says Truth Team, and you can join with us as well, because as you have probably figured out by now, no topic is off the table. Sadly, even church, sometimes the issue of God's view of sex, off the table. Not talked about that. Sometimes even in marriage, sometimes we don't talk about God's view of sex. We don't talk about it with our kids sometimes, and that's why we talk about it here on Point of View. So if you think, this is good, I'm glad you're covering these issues. Sometimes they're very controversial issues. We are willing to cover those. And so if you believe in that, give us a call, 800-347-5151. Or, of course, the website is pointofview.net. Let me again encourage you to find out what you can about Pure Hope. I think very highly of this ministry. They've never asked for my endorsement, but they've got it if they ever need it. I've actually one time even spoken to your board there because they were in the Hope Center there. And so I had a chance to chat with them and encourage them. So it's worth your investment. Hope you'll also think about investing on Point of View, and we'll be back right after this.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
You know, we just mentioned in that piece there that you will hear things you'll hear nowhere else. And that is becoming more and more true. I mean, it is a sad commentary on all the things that the mainstream media does not cover. We figured that out a long time ago. Even if the mainstream media was doing its job, and by the way, we have real questions as to how mainstream they are. But nevertheless, even if they were doing their job, there's still a lot of things they wouldn't cover, because we do cover things having to do with the Christian church and having to do with the denominations and a variety of other things, which you're never going to expect, even if CBS, NBC, ABC, even Fox News wanted to cover stories. They're not going to cover stuff that is only maybe relevant to Christians. So we recognize that. But the sad reality is that there are now becoming more and more areas of the world where they're putting up little signs saying, do not trespass, do not talk about this. We can't even get into those issues. And sometimes, as we pointed out just a minute ago with Dan, even when you get into issues of sexuality, how many times have you even had your pastor address God's view of sex? You probably have had some churches that have done that because, after all, they feel the need, or if they have when I say I do or something like that, you certainly have had some training for young couples about the issue of sexuality. But how many sermons you've ever heard on pornography, sexual trafficking, those kinds of issues that we talk about. And so, again, this is one of the reasons why we encourage you to support Point of View. If nothing else, this is an hour that we have devoted to really address some of these issues, which sometimes are happening in the local area. Last couple of days, for example, you've had a chance to hear from individuals that in one case, are talking about what's happening in Texas. Of course, even Van Taylor, even though he's a member of the House of Representatives and could certainly talk about some of the national issues, also talks about what's happening here in Texas. And we talked with Dan. He's located right here in the Dallas area. Of course, you can connect up with him anywhere across the country or literally across the world because of the incredible presence they have online, which I really appreciate. But that's just one more aspect of kind of the ministry that we have. And I thought very quickly I might just give you an overview of, again, what we're going to cover in the next couple of hours. We did talk about this issue of when spiritual heroes fall. That is my commentary today, which is based upon the interview I did last week with Greg Kokel. And I also have a link there so you can find that out. Josh McDowell met with his son, Sean McDowell, and it focuses on, again, his argument that every leader needs to have sexual integrity and accountability. I'm sure Josh is going to put me on the spot, and I'm going to say, Josh, you can go into my office right now at Probe. I always leave my computer on. I always leave my door open. The few times I have to shut the door to be on the phone, we have glass on the door. You can see everything. Nothing can happen without that. You can go, matter of fact, none of my computers, not even my phone here, you can pick it up right now. You can look at my search history, anything like that, and we would encourage all of you to do that. But we're going to spend some time talking about how did this happen? So we'll talk about that with him. But we'll also start maybe positively, because he has a very good piece that just came out the other day on the number of individuals that have been so positively impacted by his best-selling paperback, More Than a Carpenter. And I guess I'm old enough to remember when the first edition comes out. I think I still have it there. 1977 is when he tried to answer some of the questions like, is the Bible reliable? Can Jesus be who he says he is? Does the resurrection matter? And he's now making available a 6-pack of these More Than a Carpenter. So we'll be talking about that with him. But also, just in a little less than about a half an hour, we'll be talking with our good friend, John Stonestreet. We have a piece here that he co-authored, How the Church Can Mend the Tears in Our Social Fabric. Do you think we have a divided culture? Of course we do. What can the church do there in terms of having an impact? And then before we're done, he's published quite a bit on this issue of archaeology. As a matter of fact, his piece today is, Did Jesus Really Exist? So we'll get into the issue of apologetics. But again, if you haven't seen this is our booklet on archaeology, which I'm going to update because this one looked at all the incredible archaeological finds of 2019. And if you go to the break point right now, you'll see one on all the incredible archaeological finds that came out in 2020. So we're going to get into all sorts of things that we like to talk about here on Point of View. And if you find yourself saying, you know what, I really do appreciate what you are talking about right now on Point of View, I hope that you'll take the time to visit the website, which is pointofview.net. Of course, you can give us a call at 800-347-5151. One other point I thought I would make, yesterday when we had Gary Bauer on, you may not have had a chance to hear that interview because it was in the second hour. It was at the 2 o'clock hour Central, or the third hour from you if you're listening to this as your first hour. And Gary spent some time really kind of talking about the fact that there's so many people that are saying this crisis at the border was just an accident. It just developed. And he points out that if nothing else, number one, the administration refuses to admit that it's a crisis. But number two, he says he thinks it's really a mistake to say that this happened accidentally, because he now then gives you in his latest end of day report all the places where Joe Biden, as candidate, basically said, you all come on down. During the primary debate, he promised that his health care plan would cover illegal aliens. Even in the Iowa campaign, he said that he wanted to bring 2 million migrants a year into the United States. Then he promised to end deportations, which he did first day in office, although that was halted by judge that was actually a Trump appointee, kind of interesting there. Promised to stop construction of the border wall, did that the very first day. Promised a massive amnesty in which he would actually implement that in the first 100 days. And so if nothing else, first of all, you might want to go back to the website and listen to that interview with Gary Bauer, which took place in what for you would be the third hour, would be the second national hour, 2 o'clock Central. But more importantly, you might want to go to the link that we have there for Gary Bauer's end of day report and find that he actually makes a very compelling case that, number one, it's a crisis, even though they call it a challenge. And number two, it's deliberate. It is a deliberate crisis and didn't just happen by accident. And so that's just another resource that we wanted to point you to so that you can find out a little bit more. Some other ones we're going to get to in the next couple of days, as we had a United States senator from California argue that it's actually easier to get a gun than it is to vote. And I think it is deserving of a longer piece. So we will probably post that tomorrow so that you can understand that how wrong that is. Yeah, I mean, it's so wrong as to be deliberately deceptive. Either this individual who has been appointed as senator to cover, of course, now that you have Kamala Harris as the vice president, either this senator really doesn't know, which means he certainly shouldn't be a United States senator, or he knows and he's deliberately lying, and we're going to go into some of that as well as we have more time. And one other piece, been following all the money that George Soros and various other campaigns are now together. There are 60 different progressive groups trying to pressure Democrats to eliminate the filibuster. And so just as a program note, about this time, an hour from now, we're going to go into what does the filibuster mean, and what does that mean to you and your family, and why eliminating the filibuster could be so dangerous. So I hope you'll stay with us for all of that. But as we take a break, as I mentioned, we still have a match on the table. So if you're saying, I kind of like what you guys are doing, and I want to send you some money, one-time gift of $50 becomes $100, one-time gift of $200 becomes $400. But I hope some of you might just think of joining us for $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. That is one of the kind of foundations for this ministry, and you can do that by going to pointofview.net, or how about you give us a call right now, 800-347-5151.
The definition of being committed is dedication, loyalty to a cause, wholeheartedly invested. It can also mean being involuntarily placed in an institution like a mental facility or a prison. Now follow me here. People who believe some of the things now supported by our federal government used to be subjected to the second definition. In Nineveh, the Bible tells us that people couldn't tell the difference between their right hand and their left. But in today's America, we don't even know the difference between a man and a woman. If you're committed to truth, Then I urge you today to join the Point of View Truth Team. Kerby is committed to providing you the information you need to stand for what is right and what is ultimately good for everyone. But he cannot stand alone. We need you to be committed, invested in the cause. Sign up today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me. It is the Wednesday edition of Point of View, and as always, we're so grateful that you can join us today. You know, one of the things we've been talking about lately is, of course, this idea of the H.R. 1, which would be taking some of the worst things, I think, of the 2020 election and mandating them nationwide. Got a piece here by Senator Ted Cruz in which he just doesn't hold back. I think that doesn't surprise you. He calls it the Corrupt Politicians Act, in which it would rig elections for the radical left, and goes into that in some detail, and recognizes that this would take, in many cases, the worst practices rather than the best practices from various states and implement them nationwide. And so he calls that the Corrupt Politicians Act, which I thought was kind of interesting because, again, it will not be passed unless we get rid of the filibuster. Here is a piece that just came out in which dark money, led in large part by George Soros, I know that doesn't surprise you, and now there's a coalition of about 60 different progressive groups all trying to pressure a couple of the moderate Democrats into eliminating the filibuster, and that right now requires 60 votes in order to advance legislation. So later this hour, we're going to spend some time answering the question, well, what does the filibuster mean? What's its history? I'll give it very briefly, and then what that means to you and your family. So I just wanted to give you that sort of as a program note because it's really important, and we're going to cover that today. But you might say, well, what are you going to cover today? Well, in just a few minutes, we're going to have our friend John Stonestreet. Now, he has a very good piece we've posted here, how the church can mend the tears in our social fabric. And so we're going to talk about culture and how we can really be involved in being salt and light and what that means. Also, his daily commentary today is, did Jesus really exist? Because he points out, you know, as we get closer to Easter, you got newspapers and cable networks offering the real story about Jesus. But then if you go online, you have people saying, well, Jesus never even existed. So we'll mention that. And also one of the things that he loves to talk about is archaeology. This is a piece, interestingly enough, that came out in Breakpoint on the top biblical archaeological finds of 2020. My booklet on biblical archaeology, which we've made available to you, looked at some of the archaeological finds, which were just incredible in 2019. So we'll get kind of an update there. Maybe I'll update the booklet. And one more point I thought I might make is that in a little over an hour, Josh McDowell will be with us, and he has written about a number of things, one of which, of course, is just the number of individuals that have been positively influenced by his best-selling paperback, More Than a Carpenter. Published it back in 1977, if you can believe that, and now is making that available in bulk. And also a piece that we've posted where he did an interview with his son, Sean McDowell. And by the way, Sean McDowell will be on with us tomorrow, and Josh will be on today, about the need for sexual integrity and accountability with our leaders, which ties in very much to my Viewpoints commentary today on what happens when spiritual heroes fall. That is an interview that I did with Greg Kokel, and we're going to follow up with that with Josh McDowell. So that gives you a pretty good idea of what we're going to cover over the next 2 hours. But if you've been listening, you know that this is our Truth Team Week, and we, as a theme, are committed to truth. And to help me out, we have in studio with us Brad Fisk.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here. This is like the funnest week of my whole year. I just love Truth Team. Why would that be? Well, it's because we get to work together as a team to fund this ministry. So many people, Kerby, do not know that we are listener-supported Christian radio. Let me break that down for you. Listener, that's you. Supported, that's you giving us a call and giving your very best gift at 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. You can also give online at pointofview.net.
And so, again, we encourage you to join with us. As you go to the website, you're going to find some of these articles that I'm going to be quoting from today. One very good piece by Dennis Prager and a number of others. I might also, just as a program note, mention that some of you listening to this hour may not have heard yesterday's program with Gary Bauer. And Gary Bauer at the time pointed out that he believes that this is a deliberate crisis. Well, let me do what you just did. Break that down. Is it a crisis? Well, the administration says, no, it's not a crisis. It's only a challenge. But the deliberate part was something he mentioned. Well, his Tuesday edition of the End of Day Report reminds you that all through the campaign, candidate Joe Biden, for example, in one of the debates said that his health care plan would cover illegal aliens. He, in one of the campaigns, said that he wanted to have 2 million migrants come into this country. He promised that he would actually end deportations and did that the very first day in office, that he would stop construction of the border wall. Again, he did that the very first day in office. And he also promised a massive amnesty. So, first of all, if you didn't hear the interview yesterday with Gary Bauer, I would encourage you to go back. You can check that out. But also, there are just a lot of facts, figures, and information that would help you be able to make this case, because as you talk to your elected representatives, and we encourage you to do so, and say, what are you going to do about the fact that we have, about 100,000 people and more to come across the border, and what this means in terms of these crowded facilities, what this means, and maybe even becoming a super spreader event, spreading COVID and all sorts of things. They might say, well, this is just an accident. No, it was deliberate, and it's a deliberate crisis. And if nothing else, a good illustration, Brad, of the kinds of things we talk about here on Point of View. You won't hear CNN, MSNBC talking about it being a deliberate crisis, but you will hear it here. Anybody that listens very long realizes that, Kerby. That's one of the huge distinctives of Point of View. We've been on the air close to 50 years, 50. And that's an amazing legacy that we have. We must be doing something right, or God would have shut it down a long time ago, but he has not. And it's people like you who make a difference so we can continue. You know, Kerby, I've always said our donors don't give because we're great. They give to put their values to work and make the world a better place. You know, when you are supporting not only the radio program, you're supporting the resources we have posted. First one is a piece by John Stonestreet. The second one relates to Josh McDowell. There's one by Dennis Prager that really helps answer this, what he calls anti-American lie about, the issue of anti-Asian attack in Atlanta and those kinds of things. There's another one, which I'd never seen before, which is about how black and Hispanic voters support voter ID. Because we're always hearing, no, minorities don't support this. They support H.R. 1. No, they don't. And so we're giving you some great material. These are, if you will, talking points with facts and figures and footnotes or HTML links so that you can actually say, no, wait a minute, what you said was not correct. And so it will give you an ability to make a difference. And we want to not only educate you, but empower you. So as we go to a break, I think we've got a great opportunity for you to make a phone call, because after the phone call, then you'll have a chance to hear the conversation we're going to have with John Stonestreet, who'll be with us for a while. So that number, as Brad said, is 800 347-5151. Have a number of people waiting to get your phone call. And most importantly, you can also simply go to the website, pointofview.net. I have encouraged people to do that because you can do it very quickly. I did it the other day, and it took me all of about 2 minutes.
Oh, it's really quick. And you know what? We really encourage monthly gifts. That $1 a day, the $360 for the year, we have $50 a month, and that is kind of the new sweet spot. And we've got some incredible gifts that are described on our website at pointofview.net to find out more about them, but they're really cool.
So again, you can call and they will tell you about them, or you can, even easier, go to the website, pointofview.net. We need to hear from some of you because we need to meet our budget, and we'll be back right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
How should we respond when spiritual heroes fall? That is a question Greg Kokel writes about and discussed with me recently on my radio program. The reason for the discussion centered around Ravi Zacharias, but his wise conclusions are appropriate for any time we see a pastor, elder, or ministry leader fall. He offered 5 principles to help us think biblically about the issue. First, guard your soul. We don't have to dwell on all the sordid details of the scandal. Paul says that dark deeds must be exposed. We are to do that to rebuke the guilty as a warning to others, but Paul also teaches that it is disgraceful even to speak of those things done in secret. Second, do not be surprised when sinners sin. Yes, we may be shocked, but we should not be shaken. The Bible notes that Jesus did not entrust himself to those who believed in him, since he knew what was in man. Third, remember, truth is still true. It is tempting, especially to the skeptic, to denigrate Christianity because of the failings of a Christian leader. Truth is not nullified because a Christian leader strayed from biblical teaching. Fourth, do not become cynical. There's always an impulse to cast a jaundiced eye towards other Christian leaders. Do not let the failings of a few cause suspicion of the many. Who do you trust? Well, you can probably make a list of people you trust because you have no reason to distrust them. And fifth, finally resolve to finish well. The goal of the Christian life is to complete the course and be commended by God for our faithful service. We, of course, need help to do that from other believers and from the Holy Spirit in our lives. These are 5 wise principles that help you reflect on what to do when spiritual heroes fall. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
Over the years that I've been involved in ministry as a pastor, as a seminary professor, and now in what we do, it was at one point difficult for me to ask people to support a ministry financially. I kind of had this idea that I was asking something from them, that it was in some sense a favor they're doing for me or whatnot. Over the years, I've come to understand, if you find something God's in, then giving them an opportunity to invest in that is a privilege. Giving somebody a chance to join God at work, to give a gift that is going to be used literally to change lives and souls and to literally make a difference all around the world is a privilege. I want to be part of something like that. I want my life to count. I want to leave a legacy. I want to do something that matters. Point of View matters. Every day it matters. You're speaking the truth in love. You're speaking God's word, and it never returns void. And our listeners have an opportunity to invest in eternal difference if they'll do this.
Encouraging you to join with us and support this ministry, our good friend Jim Dennison. And we're going to be talking with John Stonestreet in just a minute, but I might just mention we have Brad Fisk in studio. I think we got something to announce.
Yeah, the break was a little lively. We have a $2,000 match challenge on the table, dollar for dollar. Very simple. It means if you give that $50 a month, it now becomes $100 a month. If you give that dollar a day for 360, it becomes $2 a day. You give a single gift of $100, it becomes $200. Give us a call, won't you, at 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled. 800-347-5151.
And again, we are bringing now to the microphone John Stonestreet. He's the president of the Colson Center for Christian Worldview, and an individual that you hear as the daily voice of Breakpoint, as well as the voice of Point. We have talked with him in the past about many of his books: A Practical Guide to Culture, Restoring All Things, Making Sense of Your World, a graduate of Bryan College, as well as holding a degree from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. John Stonestreet, thank you so much for joining us once again here on Point of View.
Oh, it's always great to be on with you, Kirby. Thanks so much for having me today.
A couple things I thought we might talk about. One piece that you co-authored on how the church can mend the tears in our social fabric. Your piece today, Did Jesus Really Exist?, which gets us into some of the areas of apologetics. I mean, you've been talking about the deity of Christ, reliability of the Bible, some of the issues of archaeology and the rest. But you have certainly been talking about culture, especially one book I recommend to many people, A Practical Guide to Culture. And we recognize right now that we are in a very divided culture, very divided society. So you and Timothy Padgett talk about the fact that the church really is the answer to trying to deal with these torn fabric of the culture. And we might talk about what the church and what we as Christians can do.
Yeah, well, we need to do that. I mean, and one reason is because we look around the culture at a kind of a broader. I
think we got him. Okay, well, we lost John Stonestreet, so I'll just continue on here. We'll see if we can pick him up here in just a minute. But one of the things that we do when we have a live radio program is continue talking. So, Brad, if nothing else, we've got a $2,000 match on the table, so that's a good reason to encourage people to give. That's a little bit more than we've had in the last few days.
It is, and we're very grateful for that. And one of the points I was going to make sometime during this segment was what you guys were just talking about. You know, there is a malicious movement to silence conservative values brought to the public arena, and that's what you were just talking about, the divisiveness of our culture, and the fact that he was about to say the church is the answer to that problem.
You know, we talk about being the salt of the earth and the light of the world, but he's pointing out the fact that we don't really trust institutions right now. As a matter of fact, the younger you are, the less likely you are to trust the government, maybe even the military now, certainly the clergy, the church, and those kinds of things. But it seems to me that if nothing else, that is really the answer. When you look at especially this cancel culture right now, there's just no place for forgiveness, which is a biblical concept. There's no place for grace. I have seen people that have come on and said, you know, maybe we should give some grace to this individual, and they get tossed off the air because of that. In some respects, we're talking about grace. We're talking about forgiveness, and that's really what, of course, the church is talking about. I think we have John Stonestreet back, and usually we don't cut you off that quickly, but for some reason, we lost you for a few minutes. But what would you like to share with our listeners about this idea of what the church can do?
Well, I hope I didn't say anything wrong. I was kind of worried there for a bit, Kirby. So no, it's great to be on with you guys. Now, listen, what I was trying to say at the time was just as the call for the church to be an ingredient or a source of social cohesion. There's no other options right now. There's no other part of our culture that is providing cohesion. There's a whole lot of them providing division. If you think about the legal environment, you think about the educational environment, you think about even the corporate environment that is, you know, basically isolating people increasingly because of, you know, deeply held beliefs that until yesterday were pretty, you know, mainstream beliefs about sex and marriage and that sort of stuff. You know, we could just go down the line. Certainly, you know, the part of culture that is shaped by social media, all of these different aspects of society which we could look at not that long ago and see how they actually provided help for social cohesion and for kind of a national identity. Those things are now actually creating national division. So, I mean, look, I think the church has unique resources in order to do this, but there's also the reality of, look, it's either the church that's going to contribute to this or nothing else. There's nothing else on the table right now.
And again, one of the things that you talk about in this piece, that one of the offsprings of postmodernism, which is a big word, which we've tried to define here, are critical theories like critical race theory, slip the surly bonds of academic culture. I love the turn of phrase. But if nothing else, that's something we were talking about while we were trying to get you back on the air, because in, let's take critical race theory, white supremacy, whatever, there's really no forgiveness. In other words, we have seen, John, individuals, grovel and say, I recognize my words have been hurtful and I've decided to reevaluate what I say. And instead of saying, okay, I guess he got the point, they then say, and that's why you should never be allowed to play for this band again. This is why you should never be allowed to host this program again. That's why we should never publish another book like you again, because at least the church, theoretically, and certainly the gospel, actually provides grace and forgiveness. But you don't see a lot of that out there right now, do you?
No, there's no. But the thing is that the worldview that shapes critical theory doesn't allow it. In critical theory, the problem with the world is not someone who's inherently valuable who does something wrong. The problem with the world is somebody who is part of a group that should be deplatformed, deprivileged up front. In other words, our guilt is not in what we do. It's actually fundamentally in whatever group we belong to. Our moral status is elevated if we're a part of the oppressed group, and it's immediately established in us if we're a part of the oppressor group, which we may or may not have even participated in. So one slip up, and it just proves that you're what's wrong with the world. I mean, we saw this obviously immediately in response to the awful shooting that took place not too far from where from me here in Colorado. I'm in Colorado Springs, and the shooting in Boulder just the other day, where it was an immediate assumption of who the shooter was, and he was that shooter because he belonged to a particular demographic group, and of course that turned out to be wrong. And so, how do you actually make sense of that? And there's not an ability in the current frame of reference that's shaping so much of our culture, so many of our cultural institutions, to really properly understand the problem. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to be able to offer any way forward that certainly brings any sort of restoration or renewal to the table.
Let's, if we can, as we take a break, come back and we'll get into some other issues. First of all, if you go to our website, pointofview.net, you'll see a link to breakpoint.org. And the Breakpoint commentary today, Did Jesus Really Exist? We'll come back and talk a little bit about how to defend the Christian faith. But even in this article, the church is God's plan A. There is no plan B. And so certainly we want to equip the church to be the church. But just before we take a break, we have a match on the table, don't we, Brad?
$2,000 dollar for dollar match for you to give. And we're asking a question. Are you committed to truth? That's our theme. Are you committed to truth? If you are, we would ask you to please give us a call, pray and obey, see what God would have you do to give to the ministry so we can continue doing what we're doing, what we've done almost for 50 years. And that phone number to call and give is 800-347-5151. How about 7 of you at $1 a day, that $360 level, giving us a call at 800-347-5151. You can also give right online, pointofview.net, pointofview.net. Every dollar doubled.
Let me just mention, when we come back, we're going to talk about the latest commentary here. Did Jesus really exist? And we got all sorts of good things coming our direction in terms of biblical evidence and archaeology and all the rest. So we'll talk about that. But this would be a perfect time for you to call. You won't miss anything. 800-347-5151. The call won't take long. Of course, as I said, if you go to the website, it took me all of 2 minutes. It shouldn't take you any longer either. So again, pointofview.net or 1-800-347-5151. We'll continue our conversation with John Stonestreet right after this.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation today with John Stonestreet. And again, this is during our Truth Team Week. This week's theme is Committed to Truth. We're committed to truth. I know you are as well. And one of the reasons why we like to highlight Breakpoint is what a great place to find news, information, commentary, focusing on truth. So I do want to get into his commentary today. Did Jesus really exist? But Brad, give us an update, because you just announced we have a match on the table.
A $2,000 match. We are not there yet. Please don't let this opportunity go by. Let's get every dollar of that into our total, and your giving is what does it. 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Dollar for dollar match.
You know, John Stonestreet, there is a tremendous amount of overlap between you and me, because we talk about developing a Christian worldview, and then we also talk about the need to help people know how to defend a worldview, and certainly defend the Bible, and that's apologetics. And your piece today, did Jesus really exist? Now, everybody goes, well, of course he did. Well, you know, there is where you run into problems, because you have newspapers and news magazines and all sorts of things wanting to tell you the real story about Jesus. And you know even better than I, perhaps, as you go out there on the internet, there are all sorts of people online that say, no, I don't even think Jesus ever existed, which is amazing to me, because you have individuals who wouldn't agree with you and me theologically, who would say, now don't say stupid things. Of course we know Jesus existed. And that's one of the reasons why you felt you needed to do a Breakpoint commentary right about now.
Well, you know, I often say this is the golden age of answers, right? I mean, if there's a question for Christianity or Christian morality, somebody has thought of it and come up with it. But it's also what we call the age of information. And so the age of information is an age where everybody is an expert, right? And, you know, everybody can share their opinions. And it's really confusing, I think, especially for young people, and especially if these young people are Christian and in churches that don't address these questions. I can't tell you, Kerby, and you've had this experience too, I'm sure, how many young people tell me, I've been in church my whole life, and I've never heard an answer for this question, so it must not exist. Or there's been a bunch of famous deconversions, you know, over the last couple of years of worship leaders or other people, former, you know, musicians who said, you know, I really, you know, enjoyed this Christian thing, but then I started wrestling with the problem of evil, and I realized there was no answer. And I think to myself, I know 15 books to that, you know, they give you that answer, and they give answers to better questions than you're actually asking right now. And so it's a real tragedy when so much content is out there that sometimes really silly things like, you know, claims which proliferate on the internet or on social media that, you know, Jesus never existed. I mean, as you said, no serious scholar, Christian or skeptical, believes that. There's, you know, non-biblical evidence from first century historians, you know, Paul in writings that are widely acknowledged both by skeptical and Christian scholars to be his, mentions Jesus' brother James. You know, if Jesus never existed, it'd be really hard for him to have a brother. And so there's just so many different examples of this, and it's really simple things to address. And so what we were trying to do is provide those answers kind of on the low shelf, not only to answer that question, but to help people understand the question is answerable. And there's so many great answers out there, which is why, Kerby, I do feel like a kindred spirit with you, with Point of View. We've been friends and colleagues for a long time now because we're both after that same thing.
Let me also talk about another feature that you've developed there at Breakpoint, and that is, what would you say if? What would you say if? As a matter of fact, you have one that just came out. What would you say if someone told you Jesus didn't exist? Because you felt the need to not only provide, if you will, the education, which we try to do here on Point of View, but then also not only educate, but empower and equip, if you will, whatever E you want to use there, because in some respects, that's the other part of that, is that people might say, oh, I just wish I had John Stonestreet standing next to me right now. I wish I had Greg Kokel here. Next hour, we got Josh McDowell. Boy, I wish I had Josh McDowell or Sean McDowell, somebody like that, because then they could answer this question. But you want to equip people so that they could answer the question, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, listen, it's not the professional's job to do apologetics. It's every Christian's job to, according to 1 Peter, live as a person of hope in a way that people ask you these questions. And then you got to be ready to give an answer for those, for the hope that you have. This isn't something that is, that 1 Peter designates to Josh McDowell and Kerby Anderson. It's something that, that is actually designated to followers of Jesus, and in that context, who are facing persecution, right? And as we increasingly face not only a distrust in Christian truth claims, but a disdain. It's one thing to live in a culture where Christianity is thought to be, unpopular or traditional. It's another thing when it's thought to be wrong and evil. And at that point, are we going to have the hope which comes from the confidence that Jesus Christ rose from the dead? And are we going to be able to articulate that? This is part of every Christian's job description. So that's a big, passionate, mission for us at the Colson Center. And I know it is for you too at Point of View, is that everyday Christians are having these conversations. It's happening, as Chuck Colson used to say, over the backyard fence and around the barbecue grill.
Yes.
That culture is not just national, it's local. So we all have to be ready for it.
One more point that I wanted to make, and you sort of alluded to it, but it's worth bringing out. It's enough to educate and even equip, but then you still have to have that missing ingredient, courage, boldness. And, Rod Dreher has been writing about that. You've, of course, quoted him as well. Live not by lies, in which if we don't actually stand up and show courage, and in some respects take courage from those of individuals that he interviews in his book that were behind the Iron Curtain, that when people told them lies, that they stood up and said, no, we're going to live not by lies, we're going to live by the truth, which is Alexander Solzhenitsyn's line from which the title of the book comes. And it seems to me that right now, one of the other issues, John, is courage and boldness is in short supply. And if we continue to allow people bully us with the cancel culture, if anybody's ever been in a schoolyard with a bully, you know what happens when you give in, you get more of it, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do. And of course, there's plenty of times in history where the bully wins. But you also have to look at these people that Rod talks about and live not by lies, and the people we read about from the first century who counted it a joy to be a witness and a testimony to Christ despite hardship and persecution and even death. That's a way of thinking about the faith that we just haven't had to wrestle with, and it's probably time to do that. But I do think that I'm missing one of the reasons that courage is in such short supply. I think there's really two things at the root of it. Number one is a lack of confidence that Christianity is actually true. You don't feel alarmed. You don't feel like all the pressure is on you, when you're saying something obviously true, like the earth is round, right? I mean, it's just like obviously true. And we have to think that same way about the Christian faith. And there's good reason to have confidence in the Christian faith. That's one of the things we can help. The other thing, though, that I think also matters is, do we truly love our neighbor? Because standing for what's true in Christian terms is a way of loving our neighbor by helping them know what's true about themselves. For example, when Christians choose to set out the various lies, I think in particular right now on the transgender issue, then we're allowing a lie to shape the lives of so many young people, so many girls who are already under pressure in terms of what gives them value in a culture that's driven by fashion and all kinds of other things. And, loving our neighbor is more than just loving that individual neighbor. It's also caring about the lies that victimize our neighbor. And so we've got to live not by lies as an act of love for our neighbor, not to mention an act of love for God, whose truth is at risk the truth is at stake at this point as well.
Well, let me again encourage people to go to your website as well and support what you're doing there at breakpoint.org. And as always, John, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
It's always great to be with you, Kerby.
Brad, just before we take a break, we are looking forward to some people actually joining with us today.
We are. We have a $2,000 match on the table. Not there yet. I've not been informed of significant progress. So it's a great opportunity with a capital O to give us a call with your very best gift. It is committed to truth is what we're looking for, those of you who are committed to the truth. 800-347-5151. That's a toll-free number, 800-347-5151. 5151. You can also give at pointofview.net. That's our website, pointofview.net. Takes just a couple of moments, but you'll be making a difference for eternity. You're going to give us our voice to continue to use to preach and teach biblical truth in every aspect of life. 800-347-5151.
You know, you've heard from John Stonestreet just the other day. We played his piece where he was encouraging you to support this ministry.
Yes.
He does, and he encourages you to as well. So, again, as we go to a break, this is a perfect time for you to make that phone call, 800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. We'll give you an update, but also going to talk about the filibuster. What does that mean? We'll talk about that right after this.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
My name is Kwasi Agbota. I heard this for the first time driving through Alabama 5 minutes ago as I'm returning to Detroit. I was very touched. It stands out as timeless in its approach. I greatly appreciated that. I was moved by it, and so I called to give my testimony. And I was very curious about a lot of the same issues and timeless truth and contemporary application. So I thank God for what you all are doing, and I want to encourage you all that you are reaching perhaps a much broader audience than you might believe. God bless you.
Help us reach a broader audience, because that's certainly what we want to do. And Brad, of course, we have a match on the table there, don't we?
We do. It's a $2,000 dollar-for-dollar match. It's an opportunity for you to give and have your money increase through the gift of this match. And you can do that very simply by giving us a call. And we're asking you to consider that $1 a day. Would there be 7 of you listeners listening to give that $1 a day commitment of $360 for the year and join the Truth Team? And it's a $2,000 match, and you can be part of it. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151.
Let's see if we can talk about the filibuster for just a minute. I promoted that, and there is a real pressure on some of the members of the United States Senate to end that. So what is the filibuster? Well, it used to be that when we had the framers establish the Senate, this would be where you could have a long debate, and sometimes individuals would talk for a long period of time. Yes. And there were some great and eloquent statements being made in the 19th century, but it got really bad by the time you had more senators. And in 1917, when they were especially getting into some very contentious issues, the Senate developed a rule. It was called cloture. And it said that, these guys can sit here and talk all day, but if we can find at least 2/3 of the Senate that said, okay, we want to end debate, that's cloture, that was the case. And so that really kind of existed for some time. And then by the 1970s, there was a decision then that there might be a way to solve that. So they went from saying 2/3 to then 3/5 of the entire Senate. In other words, 60 votes, since we now have 100 senators. And unfortunately, because they developed what was called a 2-track system, what you ended up is they have now had almost 2,000 filibusters in the 50 years since then. And so a lot of bills don't make their way through. And so there has always been, if you will, kind of a guard, if you will, a break to prevent really radical legislation being rushed through the House. It has to be more deliberate and considered in the Senate. But if you get rid of that and say all we need is 50 votes plus the vice president, then H.R. 1, which we just talked about, H.R. 5, H.R. 8. So this is the Equality Act. This is immigration. This is amnesty. This is a ban on certain kinds of weapons. These are gun control laws. This is all sorts of things. They begin to come through. And I think it is fair to say, Brad, that if indeed we lose the filibuster, the country will not even look like something you would recognize.
So give me a quick example of what you just said. So if this happens, then that happens.
Then all of a sudden, for example, we talked about the fact that Senator Ted Cruz said that this would be the, if you will, Protection of Corrupt Politicians Act, H.R. 1. All the worst examples that we saw in the 2020 election, and those would be, ballot harvesting and sending out ballots, multiple ballots to individuals, but even things we didn't see in the 2020 election, that you could actually register online, that you could have same-day voting, where you go in and you're not even registered to vote, but you say, I'm a, of course, you just recognize the possibility of all of this to completely upend our society. So whether it's the Equality Act, whether it's H.R. 1, or whether it's election, these are all very dangerous issues.
Point of View Truth Team.
Point of View has been a big tool in helping me work through what I believe and understand why I believe it, and giving me the ability to argue for it and to defend it.
I am increasingly dismayed at not only the slanted coverage that mainstream media provides, but the lack of coverage. If I hadn't listened to Point of View, I know people who don't even know there's a difference between embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells, and I wouldn't have known if I had not listened to your show. And I give it to you guys, but I'm going to increase that amount because I think you guys are so important.
I want you to think, what would we do if we didn't have Point of View? Give something to Point of View to make sure we don't lose this wonderful voice. And thanks again for what you do.
To protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
I do appreciate Point of View and what you folks are doing. You really are doing a great job to educate and to help Christian folks do a better job to honor Christ in all that we do.
Point of View Truth Team.
Help us do what we've been doing for almost 50 years.
Yes, that's amazing legacy, and let's honor that legacy right now. We are up against the wall here on the Match Challenge. Started with a $2,000 match. The majority of it's still available for you to call and take a piece of that. What that means is if you give $1 a day, it will become $2 a day to us. If you give $1,000, it becomes $2,000. If you give $100, it becomes $200. So we're asking you to give us a call at 800-347-5151, not because of us. You are the heroes. You are the ones that have kept us on the air for close to 50 years. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But let's not stop here. Just hearing you talk about the filibuster, we're in for some pretty big things coming up, and Point of View is going to be right there in the front lines. So 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. You can also go to pointofview.net and give there, pointofview.net. Every dollar doubled.
You know, you think about when you think of filibuster, maybe the movie, which is an old movie, but I think some people are familiar with Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yes.
But just imagine if 50 Democratic senators could, even while Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or somebody else is speaking and talking about the problems of the bill, could say, we're going to just cut off debate and we're going to vote. And it only takes 50% of the members of the Senate to actually pass that. And now there is so much pressure on some of these moderate Democrats. I feel an urgency, first of all, in terms of meeting the match, which we just talked about, but also an urgency to educate people about what is at stake if indeed we lose the filibuster. And these are the kinds of things we talk about on Point of View every day.
We do. We need to pray. We need to call each other to prayer, and we need to get into God's Word and see what His standards are. But it's very, very important. So, folks, we really love to hear from you. Brand new donors who never given before. Boy, this is a great time to join the financial family of Point of View at 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. 5151.
You know, we just heard from somebody that we've got a significant amount there, which means there may be somebody out there that says, you know, I probably could give a gift of $1,000, and that would be matched right now.
It would,
which,
exactly.
Of course, if we have some other opportunities in the future, some people might say, well, will my gift be matched? And the answer is yes right now, because there's that much still remaining on that. So let me encourage not only those of you that might want to give $5 a month or $10 a month or $1 a day, but some of you might want to give $5,000 or even $10,000 if you can do that.
That's right. 800-347-5151. You can also go to pointofview.net. It's 800-347-5151.
We'll take a break. We'll be talking with Josh McDowell next hour, but we need to hear from you. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
The definition of being committed is dedication, loyalty to a cause, wholeheartedly invested. It can also mean being involuntarily placed in an institution like a mental facility or a prison. Now follow me here. People who believe some of the things now supported by our federal government used to be subjected to the second definition. In Nineveh, the Bible tells us that people couldn't tell the difference between their right hand and their left. But in today's America, we don't even know the difference between a man and a woman. If you're committed to truth, then I urge you today to join the Point of View Truth Team. Kerby is committed to providing you the information you need to stand for what is right and what is ultimately good for everyone. But he cannot stand alone. We need you to be committed, invested in the cause. Sign up today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Yes, sir. I want to get back to some of the issues in the news and one of the articles we've posted on the website. And then as a program note, we're going to be talking with our good friend Josh McDowell in just a few minutes. But one of the articles we've posted here, it's the fourth article, Black and Hispanic Voters Support Voter ID. And it relates to something I mentioned at the top of the hour. But let me come back to it again. Senator Ted Cruz, along with a number of other people, have reminded us what would happen if H.R. 1, which has already passed the House of Representatives, was passed by the Senate. That gets into the conversation we just had a few minutes ago about the filibuster.
It does.
There used to be a time in which the filibuster was a check, if you will, a really significant check, not just a small one, but one of those checks and balances that prevent any kind of radical legislation, anything that is supported by a vocal minority, from being foisted upon the rest of the country. Now, one of the points that is made by Ted Cruz is that this bill, H.R. 1, which is now in front of the United States Senate, it's already passed the House, and it would be signed by the president. So the only check on this is in the Senate. He says it would throw out state election laws and put Washington in charge. Okay, what does he mean by that? He says this bill eliminates countless state election integrity laws, including state voter ID laws. Now, the argument that you've always heard, and frankly, I've even accepted, is that, some people are against voter ID laws, which is exactly why we've posted this particular article, because if you look at the surveys that have been done, and this has been hidden, I think, in most cases by the mainstream media as well. This one talks about the fact that 77%, that's basically more than 3/4 of registered voters, believe that requiring a voter ID is certainly something that we should do, and only 15% oppose it. And you might say, well, yeah, that's probably just all Republicans. Well, it is 92% of Republicans, but it's also 75% of independents. It's 63% of Democrats. So you can't find on any group where it isn't a majority that believe that voter ID. So that brings me to why I posted this particular piece. Black and Hispanic voters also support voter ID, because you are told by all sorts of various politicians, sometimes Democrats, sometimes independents. You're told by the Brennan Center and a variety of others that this is not supported by minorities. Well, guess again, because you have, for example, how many African-American voters? 64% actually support voter ID. You know, how many Hispanic? 78%. So you start going down the numbers and you recognize that that is the case. And so this is one of the points that Ted Cruz makes. It would just eliminate something that by a majority are supported. And I've pointed out before that even as we talked about just the other day, in order to get a vaccine, you have to show your ID once, you have to show it again. It will also undermine Americans' voting rights for expanding illegal immigrants. It would allow felons to have an opportunity to vote for the first time. It would allow ballot harvesting, which I just talked about a minute ago with Brad. It also funnels millions of dollars through a very interesting kind of subsidy program program into some of these campaigns. And so it's something that if people really understood what it was, they would be outraged. And that's one of the reasons we have still on our website, if you go to pointofview.net, you will notice that middle section there says Take Action. It's for the People Act, but it's all sorts of other things that we warned back in the fall. Do you remember that when we warned people about what could happen? And Brad Fisk is with us, and you kind of short list here, and all those things from Medicare for All or Green New Deal, free college tuition, ending deportation of people that are illegally here, all sorts of aspects.
Ending the filibuster is on this list.
Packing the court, adding additional states, turning territories into states, all of those things that we warned you about. None of them can happen without congressional action, or some have happened because of executive action but can be overturned. But it brings us back to the conversation we just had a minute ago about the filibuster.
It does, and we need to do something about it. And what that is continue to see that Point of View is a program, is an entity that's going to keep an eye. It's going to watch our back. That's the easy way to say. Kerby Anderson's watching my back every day, and you can help us do that because this is Truth Team Week. We do this a couple times a year, and our theme for this time is Committed to Truth. So we're looking for those of you who are committed to truth, the biblical truth of the Bible and all that it teaches and says about how we live our lives. Please give us a call, 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
But I feel it's so important that we know what's going on, and you folks do a great job of it. And I also had joined, it's the best thing to do. Like somebody said, they do $1 a day, and they don't feel that so much. At the end of the month, they've got $30 to send right off. And it's up to us citizens to pay attention and do what we can, and to pray and to help you out as much as we can.
Thank you so much for everything that everyone in that room does, and that we need this show like you wouldn't believe.
My husband and I are your supporters. We just really appreciate the show and the people you bring on.
Yes, thank you for, first of all, what you do. And I just wanted to say that your program is giving us a voice, and I want to thank you for that.
So I've been listening to y'all for years. I'm not a politico whatsoever. I believe in voting, yes. But if it weren't for y'all, I wouldn't know how to vote. I'm serious. I wouldn't know the first thing about voting, but I do now.
Point of View, Truth Team 360.
Back once again, we're going to be talking with Josh McDowell in just a minute. And we didn't meet the match last hour, didn't we?
At the very last moment by a whisker. And some friends of the ministry had so much fun having this last hour, they decided to step up with a $2,000 match.
So we have another $2,000 match on the table.
Another $2,000. That means that every dollar you give is doubled up to the $2,000 mark. So your gift of $50 a month becomes $100 a month, just like that. A single gift of $5 becomes $10. So you see how this works? Please give us a call. Don't hold back. If you're committed to truth, if you're committed to see Point of View continue to grow and prosper and be there when we need them for the information they have, give us a call. 800-347-5151. You monthly givers, love to see you come to the table as well. 800-347-5151. You can also give online, pointofview.net. pointofview.net, or call us at 800-347-5151.
You know, during our Truth Team, we really like to spend some time kind of highlighting some ministries we think very highly of. And the next one we're going to be talking about is Josh McDowell. Josh.org is all you really need to know. And you've known him for years, and first joined Campus Crusade back in 1961, and individual that has certainly been speaking on all these issues. We'll talk about the fact that they're making available still the More Than a Carpenter, which first published back in 1977.
That's great.
Then get a six-pack of those and use those to reach out to individuals. But also a very serious interview that he did with his son, Sean McDowell, and Sean will be on tomorrow, interestingly enough, about, what about when leaders fall? And so that is something that I actually wrote about earlier, and it's something we have on the website today. But you really want to call right now. You don't want to miss Josh. So give us a call, 800-347-5151, and join with us. Of course, the website, pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
How should we respond when spiritual heroes fall? That is a question Greg Kokel writes about and discussed with me recently on my radio program. The reason for the discussion centered around Ravi Zacharias, but his wise conclusions are appropriate for any time we see a pastor, elder, or ministry leader fall. He offered 5 principles to help us think biblically about the issue. First, guard your soul. We don't have to dwell on all the sordid details of the scandal. Paul says that dark deeds must be exposed. We are to do that to rebuke the guilty as a warning to others. But Paul also teaches that it is disgraceful even to speak of those things done in secret. Second, do not be surprised when sinners sin. Yes, we may be shocked, but we should not be shaken. The Bible notes that Jesus did not entrust himself to those who believed in him, since he knew what was in man. Third, remember, truth is still true. It is tempting, especially to the skeptic, to denigrate Christianity because of the failings of a Christian leader. Truth is not nullified because a Christian leader strayed from biblical teaching. Fourth, do not become cynical. There's always an impulse to cast a jaundiced eye towards other Christian leaders. Do not let the failings of a few cause suspicion of the many. Who do you trust? Well, you can probably make a list of people you trust because you have no reason to distrust them. And fifth, finally resolve to finish well. The goal of the Christian life is to complete the course and be commended by God for our faithful service. We, of course, need help to do that from other believers and from the Holy Spirit in our lives. These are 5 wise principles that help you reflect on what to do when spiritual heroes fall. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
Hi, this is Michael Ferris. I am the President, CEO, and General Counsel of Alliance Defending Freedom, and I've been friends with Point of View Radio for decades. This is such a great radio ministry. I'm personally a partner with Point of View, and I would encourage each of you to be a partner. Point of View gets information in a timely fashion to people who need to know the truth, and Point of View brings you the truth. It brings you a Christian perspective on the news, and it calls you to prayer and action in a timely manner. I'll never forget the day that freedom was preserved in the homeschool arena because of the work of Point of View Radio, as leading the charge on that. And so always been grateful for that and would encourage you to be a part of the Point of View team. God bless you.
Encouragement from Michael Ferris, and we're going to be talking with Josh McDowell in just a minute. But again, this is our Truth Team Week, and Brad Fisk with us. And Brad, how we doing? We have a match on the table.
We do. It's a $2,000 dollar-for-dollar match. Every dollar you give up to the $2,000 is doubled, and we'd love to hear from you right now at 800-347-5151. That's toll-free 800-347-5151. You can also give at pointofview.net, pointofview.net, Every dollar doubled.
Well, we bring to the microphone now a good friend, Josh McDowell, an individual that joined the Campus Crusade staff back in 1961. Just think of how many decades of that. And one of the things we do want to talk about is just providing hope in the midst of hopelessness. And his book, More Than a Carpenter, published back in 1977. One of the things we want to encourage you to do is go to josh.org, because you can get a 6-pack and hand those out to others. Josh, it is great to have you back on the program.
Oh, finally, it's like dying and going to heaven being with you.
What about that? 1977, you know, I remember picking up a copy of that book when individuals were encouraging you to try to, in a very simple way, try to begin to pull together some of the questions that people ask about, is the Bible reliable? Can Jesus be who he says he is? Why does the resurrection matter? This has been something that you have dedicated your life to, and it is so helpful and encouraging to see that book is still making such an impact.
You know, it's up, evidence is over 6 million, I think, now, which is probably number one in history for the size of the book and the cost of it. It's not a cheap book because it's so big.
I got mine in 1974, so I know.
The problem is there's so much truth out there, but people just don't realize it.
So one of the things I wanted to maybe get you thinking about for just a few minutes is this kind of area of apologetics. You know, we have spent some time today talking about not only the need to develop a Christian worldview, but also to know how to defend a Christian worldview. And I remember when, you know, I had a Josh McDowell book and a Norm Geisler book, and that's about it. And yet now we have so many great resources for individuals that really need to know how to defend their faith. And I think we have that need for apologetics more than ever, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Throw Lee Strobel in there. That guy's disgusting. He's so good. There's a lot of good books out there, even better than mine, but I'm not going to tell you which ones they are.
Let's, if we can, also talk about what you're doing in your ministry right now. And one of those, if you go to josh.org, and we talked about this last time, this whole pandemic and the lockdown has really been something that you've been concerned about, because this issue of loneliness, depression, even suicidal thoughts is something that you, through your ministry and through some of your associates, have been addressing, isn't it?
Yes. Research show, you know, I'm a researcher. There's 6 major epidemics going on right now in every country of the world, every culture. One is CRT, critical race theory, which is devastating. Second, social justice, which is devastating. Third, loneliness, which is killing more people than cigarettes and obesity. And then there's depression, and then anxiety, and then pornography. Mm-hmm. Those are the 6 top epidemics in the world. And here's the key thing, these were all around before COVID. COVID did not bring these on. What COVID has done has intensified them and multiplied the impact of loneliness, depression, and all. And so I think it's important to realize that COVID didn't start these, but it's sure prolonging them.
You know, one of the things we talked about a couple hours ago was Dan Martin. He's with PureHope, is just the need for accountability, the need for protecting young children, the need for equipping and eventually modeling. And one of the things, Josh, that we have actually posted is the interview that your son did with you. And this, as a matter of fact, we're going to have Sean on tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see his take on that. But it's really getting into...
The one with Robbie Zucker, about Robbie?
Yeah, and the whole issue of sexual integrity and accountability. And I wanted to get your thoughts about that, because even today, my commentary, which I write a week ahead of time, I didn't even think it was going to come out today, is on the whole issue of when spiritual heroes fall. And it was an interview I did with Greg Coco. But you are speaking about that, and I think that's a really important issue that we need to address as well in this culture, don't you think?
We absolutely do. My fear is what happened to Robbie is also going on in the lives of probably half of evangelical pastors and leaders in the world. And it breaks my heart to even think that. But we live in such a sex-oriented culture, when you add to that the internet, the visual, you have a monster. You have what Chuck Swindoll says, the greatest cancer in the history of the church. And boy, that's going to pornography. And I would say the number one cause of most people slipping everything else is porn. It's porn. It is so huge in the world. And this is why parents, only 75% of Christian parents said they never talked to their kids about porn on the internet.
Mm.
You know, those parents are criminals. They are. They've committed a crime against their children. I believe by 5 years old, a child needs to have a healthy, positive viewpoint on sexuality at 5 years old. Because at 6 to 8 years old is the average age that kids become involved in pornography. And it's not if my child is going to see pornography. It's when will my child see pornography. It's not, well, my kids won't look for pornography. They're godly kids. We have family devotion, everything. And I said, that's some of the stupidest thinking in the 21st century. Of course, your kids probably won't look for pornography, but you missed the point. Pornography is looking for your kids and absolutely will find them. And it's not all your energy going into keeping kids from seeing pornography. Now, that's important. But the greater task is preparing your kids for the first time they see it. That is the task of parents. Because your child's going to see it. Maybe 3% won't. And, of course, that's probably your 3%. But 97% of all kids will see porn. And so I thank God for those parents who use our resources at josh.org, et cetera, and many other people's resources to equip their kids for the first time they see it. Sex trafficking, prostitution, sex abuse within families, almost all of it starts with pornography.
Let me just encourage you to go to the website, josh.org, and you'll see something on the porn epidemic. Of course, we have our little booklet that Warren Kelly wrote on pornography. Matter of fact, in the back, you'll see all the links to Josh McDowell, 10 Ways to Fight Pornography. But we need to take one of those breaks. I'm going to come back and talk about some more specific aspects. But, Brad, we do have a match on the table.
We do. This is Truth Team Week, and we are looking for those of you who are committed to truth to give financially to the ministry. And we have a $2,000 dollar-for-dollar match on the table from some friends of the ministry, and they would like to encourage you to give. How about that $1 a day, that entry-level kind of donor level that is pretty comfortable for most people? Pointofview.net is where you can go to give. Pointofview.net, or you can give us a call. We have operators standing by right now. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Please don't delay. Give us a call and stand with us financially.
Again, if you want to find some more information about the topics we're addressing today, they're all available at the website. By the way, when you join at even the $1 a day, $30 a month level, you receive some of these booklets, including this one on pornography, the one most recently on education. That's our way of helping you to be equipped. Again, 1-800-347-5151, a perfect time to call. You won't miss any of the conversation with Josh McDowell, or you can go to the website, pointofview.net.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, and of course, it's Truth Team Week, Committed to Truth, and Brad Fisk with me in studio, and Josh McDowell by phone. And let me just mention that one of the benefits, of course, of supporting Point of View is you receive some of these booklets. This one here by Warren Kelly on our staff deals with the issue of pornography, and I was looking at the back, additional resources. Okay, Josh McDowell, 10 ways to fight pornography. Oh, there's one, Kerby Anderson, a whole week of radio programs on the subject of pornography.
There you go.
Organizations, Josh McDowell Ministry, PureHope Ministries, Covenant Eyes, as well as many other articles, and that's just one issue. But Brad, we have a match on the table, and one of the reasons I encourage people to support Point of View is how many times you've even heard in your own church a pastor preach on the subject of pornography. We're talking about it right now with Josh McDowell.
Yeah, never is really the answer. And the statistics were absolutely breathtaking that Josh shared a little bit ago at the beginning of the last break. But we're committed to truth, and we're asking you to give us a call. The match is not done, and we only have until the top of the hour, and it's over. And we need to put every dollar into our total with your help. Every dollar doubled at 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. And can you also give it pointofview.net.
You know, Josh, I want to come back to you for just a minute because we have posted this piece.
I want to say this, Kerby.
Go ahead.
I really hope you meet that match by the end of the hour. Come on, folks. Could you imagine taking Point of View off the radio or programs like that? We would have a dearth of radio that talks about truth. And Kerby, we need you on here.
Amen.
We really do. And so I'm going to be praying the rest of this hour that people will rise up and match that before we get off the air.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for encouraging individuals to do so. Let's encourage people to stand up, because one of the things that I certainly picked up from the interview that your son, Sean, who, by the way, will be on with us tomorrow, was talking about is just the need for accountability. And it seems to me that listeners out there right now, pastors, elders, deacons, just friends of pastors or leaders, need to say, okay, what kind of accountability did you have? Can we pray for you, but also can we hold you accountable so that we don't have another scandal in the Christian world? What would you say to them?
I say, one, we are going to have other scandals. And it breaks my heart because everyone is vulnerable. And here's the thing is, when they say, well, I have a group of 5 men around me or 5 women. Now, that's good. But this is what I've learned. It's not so much the numbers, but the relationship. It's the men you have a really close, intimate relationship with that impact your life, that becomes a barrier around you. I've had several men like that. One right now is a fellow named Ward Coleman. And I wouldn't, he knows me inside out. I couldn't lie to him. He would know it.
So good.
And his wife would. And so I really believe we need to emphasize men around us, numbers, women around women, but it's the relationship within those numbers that will really be a buffer.
So again, one of the things that we're encouraging you, if you're listening right now, to do is begin to consider who knows you that well and who can ask you those tough questions and how that can actually take place. And even the whole issue of what kind of guards you have placed. I mentioned earlier when we were doing another interview that there's no password on any of my computers in my phone.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick it up. I've actually handed things to some people like that. That willingness to be transparent. We hear about that. And transparency and accountability and integrity, but we need to live it out, don't we?
We sure do. On my phone, I have Covenant Eyes, and they're one of the better out there. There's a lot of good ones out there, XXX Church, etc. But if I go to any website, even close to porn, or if anything pops up on my screen, on my iPad, my iPhone, anything even similar to pornography, immediately 3 people are called. One of my best friends is called. My manager who runs my organization is called, and one other. And I did it once. I was with a couple of staff, and I said, watch this. And I hit a porn site for like 1 second and knocked it right off. And immediately the phone started ringing. Josh, what are you doing? And I thought, see, that's what we need. It'd be hard for me to carry on an affair with my iPhone because so many people have access to it.
I might just mention on this booklet that we have there, Covenant Eyes is there. Of course, you can go to covenanteyes.com. And so that's one place you can do that, and we recommend that as well. Well, before we wind down this particular interview, I wanted, Josh, maybe to share your vision, because I know that as people go to your website, they're going to find so much material, josh.org, but you've compiled decades of research that'll help parents and leaders and youth and others. So can you kind of give us an idea of what you are focusing on right now? Of course, I mentioned the porn epidemic portfolio, but you have stuff on Gen Z, which we've talked about last time you were on here, the importance of fathers, and a number of others. Give us kind of an overview of some of the things you're working on right now at Josh McDowell.
My ultimate goal, and what we're doing through the internet and through technology, is that every believer in the world will know two things: what they believe and why they believe it. Because if you don't know what you believe and then know why you believe it, you're not going to be able to build a buffer in your life over against porn, because you'll question the very source of your authority, the scriptures. Second, my goal is that everybody will come to understand porn. One, just the size of it, and second, the devastation of it. Right now we have, I think it's 694,000 pieces of technology in 170 countries. And every 60 seconds, Kirby, this is incredible. This probably never happened to anyone before. Every 60 seconds, 179 people download our resources.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
And I want to bring that up to 200, 250 every minute doing that. And that's how I feel I can serve the body of Christ. None of us can do all of it, but we got to do our part. And I thank God for people like you and Point of View. It's all part of the global buffer zone.
And again, if you go to josh.org, you'll see those numbers: 27 million copies of More Than a Carpenter, 27,000 talks given by Josh, 150 books, languages. Again, if you are not familiar with the ministry, no doubt you can get some of the resources. Again, I would commend to you the More Than a Carpenter, because you can get that as a six-pack. But if you say, well, I know somebody that actually speaks Hungarian or Polish, or maybe I'd like it in Chinese or whatever, they're just all sorts of great resources. And Brad, of course, you've known Josh for a long time, and
we go back a long ways.
And again, we've appreciated his ministry.
Not that long. It's been 50, 60 years.
Yeah. Can you realize you joined Campus Crusade for Christ 1961? That was 60 years ago, if my math is right. And if nothing else, and of course, you have been married to Dottie almost 50 years of that. Of course, I'm closing on you as well with my wife. So it has been just incredible to work with you, and thank you so much for your dedication and your work. And we just encourage people to go to your website and learn more about Josh McDowell Ministries.
We do. And thank you, Josh, for jumping aboard. And in fact, why don't you just encourage people to call right now, just for a quick minute, because we're almost out of time.
I would tell you to call right now and make a commitment to fulfill that $2,000 matching. We need to keep Point of View on the air. And I got to say, some of my better interviews over the years have been with Kerby and with Point of View.
Yes.
And so be a part of the answer.
Thank you. Here's the phone number: 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Also, you can give at pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. We have a $2,000 match challenge that's going to expire in 16 minutes. So get to the phones while they're available right now. 800 347-5151.
Now, let me, after the break, bring Warren Kelly in here for just a minute. He is the president of Point of View. Maybe he can give us an update on how we're doing here, because when we're in here broadcasting, sometimes I don't know what's going on out there. So it will be good to hear from him a little bit and how close we are to finishing that match off. We did meet the last one, just barely, and so we're certainly on the clock right now for this one. So as we've had a chance to talk with Josh McDowell, we'll come back and give you kind of an update a little bit on that regard. We'll give you a look at what's going to happen tomorrow. We're going to have Sean McDowell with us.
That's great. I love it.
I love Sean.
I love it.
And so that'll be a lot of fun, too. But again, as we're going to the break, this is a perfect time for you to call. You've been waiting. You said, I don't want to miss a minute of Josh McDowell. Okay, he's gone on to his day. And again, that number is 800-347-5151. If you've been waiting to make a phone call, if you're waiting for putting us over the top, you can do it. 800-347-5151. Pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
To all listeners out there, I've been listening for over 2 years. I just recently became a supporter. So I'm a proud supporter of Point of View, and so I would just encourage everyone who listens to this radio station and to your specific broadcast, because it has been so influential for me, and I refer people to it because you put out such great information, and it's so thought-invoking and conversation-stimulating. It's great. So Thank you so much, and I'll continue to support you guys.
You know, my husband and I take so many extra precautions to guard our children, and it is a huge effort on the part of Christian parents to do that. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
Back once again, if you would like to join with us, we encourage you to do so. That number is 800-347-5151. And we'll come back and maybe hear from a few other donors and give you an update. We were going to get Warren Kelly on.
Yeah, that
and
was the
I
plan.
go into his office, and he's on the phone answering the call. So that's better action than sitting here and talking with us. So we'll give you an update a little bit later. But, you know, I came back to one of the issues that you were asking about earlier, and I see the incredible amount of money being right now put together by 60 different progressive groups. I might even post this tomorrow because it is really concerning how there is a tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of pressure on the few, and there are very few, moderate Democrats in the Senate who are being pressured to get rid of the filibuster.
Right.
And once you end up with a filibuster which says we no longer have to get 70 or even 60 votes to move legislation forward, then you end up in a situation where 50 do so, and 50 could then also simply say, we'll end the debate. You know, we see Mr. Smith goes to Washington talking, and then you could just end debate right there, and you wouldn't even be able to present any of that. And so we get into this very significant concern about what that would do for elections. And I did quote earlier from Senator Ted Cruz. He's not the only one. Everybody we've been quoting lately talking about this election. But there's a good point, Brad, in the fact that some people have said not only would it change the country, there may never be an election again in which you would have what you would feel true voter integrity. And so he calls it, of course, the Corrupt Politicians Act, which maybe some people may think is hyperbole, but you look at all of the things that are in these pieces of legislation, not just H.R. 1, but you have H.R. 5 and H.R. 8. This is the Equality Act, issues of immigration and amnesty. Then you start moving into the possibility of packing the Supreme Court and bringing in other territories as states.
You're talking like the progressives are stepping in with a blank check.
Yes.
And they get to fill in anything they want, and it doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if it's even constitutional. It almost sounds to me like a takeover.
It sure does.
It sure does. And, you know, I'm just an everyday guy. It's a concern of mine. And if you believe that we need to be committed to truth, could we hear from you? Looking for 100% participation financially. It is Truth Team Week. We're in the middle of the week. We're asking you to give. 800-347-5151. Oh, by the way, we do have a match challenge on the table of $2,000. 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
I really appreciate what you guys do. I love the program, and it's so refreshing to have this type of ministry on the air. And you know, you pray that others would tune in and really get educated from a spiritual perspective about a biblical worldview. I mean, I really appreciate it.
You guys do an amazing job. You guys always are very encouraging, and no matter what, I just wanted to thank you guys.
I just wanted to commend you for the excellent guests that you've had on your program. I think all Americans need to hear these things, and I hear you say that only 1% of listeners support your program, and I just want to encourage people out there. They need to support your program because our country needs to hear these messages.
I just want to say that I love your show. I listen to it every day because I get off just in time enough to hear it, and just keep up the good work.
Just wanted to know how much I appreciate your program. I've been listening to it for several years, and thank you so much for the positions you take. Keep up the good work.
Point of View Truth Team.
Back once again, we only have a few minutes. By the way, I just thought I'd hold these up for those of you watching online. These are just a couple of the booklets we've been referring to today. This is one of the benefits, of course, of supporting Point of View. I got pornography and archaeology and racism and debt and immigration. These are just a few we've been talking about in the last day or two, and those are available. I did get a note. Somebody just told me real quickly here that the last break, we actually had more calls than we could get to.
Okay, so we lost some calls.
So if you didn't get through, can you call back?
Please.
Because apparently we overloaded the system. I told my wife I need to have her come in on Friday. Maybe I need to have her come in tomorrow, too.
So.
Just answer the phones.
Here's the phone number if you need to redial. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Many of you listening are already part of the Truth Team, and you're giving. Could you pray? Could you pray this week? I just really believe God wants us to have the biggest week, Truth Team week, we've ever had in the history of the ministry, because there is unprecedented reason and need of what Point of View is all about in being the watchdog, watching what's going on and helping to protect biblical values. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
We're going to just take a break here in just a minute. And so let me say the obvious. That is, first of all, that even though we will go off the air, we'll still answer the phone.
Yes.
Of course, I've also pointed out that 24/7 you can go to the website, and I'm still a firm believer in using the website because you can see all of the various gifts that we would like to make available to you at different giving levels, so you can see what those look like, and that's a very good point. But also, I do want you to know that when you go there, you can get all the information we've talked about today, all the links. And then, of course, you might say, well, what's on tomorrow? Well, we've got John McDowell on tomorrow, so that's one of our guests, and you'll find out more of that. And all of it's at the website. So you're supporting the radio program, you're supporting all of the links, the books, the videos, all sorts of other resources that we are making available to you.
I'd like to specifically ask you to go and look at the $50 a month level. We have some really, really cool gifts, and I'm just going to leave it there. You can look at everything and the spec of the gift and everything at pointofview.net. But take a look at that $50 a month level. It's just really cool what we're doing. So, but it's not the gifts. We're just a thank you gift, because what it really amounts to is the future of our country and understanding biblical viewpoints. That's what we're about, and we want to continue to be that source for you. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. 5151. And of course, we do encourage you to go to pointofview.net.
Let me also mention that tomorrow we're going to get into some of these other issues where you have not been told the truth. Today we talk about what Dennis Prager calls the anti-American lie. We also have a piece here about, it turns out that minorities do support the idea of voter ID. We'll get into one. This comes from the newly appointed senator from California, who I think has completely misrepresented all sorts of facts and figures about everything from voter ID to voting to gun control and all the rest. So we're trying to give you information and to equip you to make a difference. So we're just about ready to go off the air. So let's again encourage you, if you have been waiting to make the phone call, now's the time to do it. 800-347-5151. The website is pointofview.net.
Don't forget to pray for us. That is so important. Prayer is just, will keep this whole thing together and going strong. Thank you for giving.
Well, it's been a great day. And Brad, thank you for your help. And certainly want to thank Andrew and Steve for their help behind the scenes. We will be back here tomorrow, right here on Point of View.
The definition of being committed is dedication, loyalty to a cause, wholeheartedly invested. It can also mean being involuntarily placed in an institution like a mental facility or a prison. Now follow me here. People who believe some of the things now supported by our federal government used to be subjected to the second definition. In Nineveh, the Bible tells us that people couldn't tell the difference between their right hand and their left. But in today's America, we don't even know the difference between a man and a woman. If you're committed to truth, then I urge you today to join the Point of View Truth Team. Kerby is committed to providing you the information you need to stand for what is right and what is ultimately good for everyone. But he cannot stand alone. We need you to be committed, invested in the cause. Sign up today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.